The Archive.
It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when Jamie stumbled upon an old VHS tape at the local thrift store. The cover was plain except for a hand scroll label that read The Archive. Jamie, a nostalgia junkie and retro technology enthusiast, couldn't resist. She purchased the tape for $1 and hurried home to watch it. Jamie's living room was filled with relics of the past, an old rotary phone, vinyl records, and a bulky CRT TV. She dusted off her VHS player, inserted the tape, and hit play. The screen flickered to life with static before settling on a grainy image of a nondescript office room. The footage seemed mundane until the first jump cut. The scene abruptly switched to a different angle, showing a middle-aged man seated at a desk, staring directly into the camera. His expression was eerily blank, and his eyes seemed to follow Jamie as she watched. The man introduced himself as Dr. Harold Lava and began to describe an experiment conducted in the early 90s, designed to explore the limits of human consciousness. Dr. Lava explained that participants were subjected to prolonged exposure to certain frequencies of sound and light patterns intended to unlock hidden areas of the mind. As he spoke, the video quality deteriorated and strange, almost imperceptible whispers filled the background. Jamie's skin prickled as the whispers grew louder, forming barely audible words. "Join us. Find the truth." She felt an uneasy pull, as if the tape was speaking directly to her. Despite her growing discomfort, she couldn't bring herself to stop the tape. The video transitioned to interviews with the experiment's participants. Each person appeared increasingly disheveled and paranoid, their eyes wide with fear. One by one, they described experiencing vivid, horrifying visions of shadowy figures and grotesque landscapes. They spoke of a place they called the Archive, a vast, nightmarish library of lost memories and forbidden knowledge. As the interviews progressed, Jamie noticed a disturbing pattern. Each participant would suddenly freeze mid-sentence, their expressions twisting into grotesque masks of terror before the video cut to black. These cuts were always accompanied by a jarring, high-pitched screech that made Jamie's ears ring. She paused the tape, her hands trembling. The atmosphere in her apartment felt heavier, almost oppressive. She glanced at her phone and saw that hours had passed, though it felt like mere minutes. Determined to uncover the truth, she pressed play again. The next segment was a compilation of surveillance footage from the experiment's facility. The images were distorted and flickered with static, showing the participants wandering through dimly lit hallways and rooms. Their expressions were vacant, as if they were sleepwalking. Occasionally, they would stop and stare at something just off camera, their eyes wide with horror. Jamie leaned closer, trying to discern what they were seeing. Suddenly, the screen filled with a blinding white light, followed by a brief glimpse of a towering figure with elongated limbs and hollow, glowing eyes. Jamie's heart raced as she rewound the tape to get a better look, but the figure was gone. The footage continued, showing the participants growing more agitated and violent. They scratched at their skin until it bled, tore at their hair, and screamed at invisible tormentors. Dr. Lava's voiceover detailed their descent into madness, noting that the experiment had been abruptly terminated after several participants went missing. Jamie's unease deepened as the video cut to a new scene, a police report detailing the disappearance of Dr. Lava and his entire team. The report was dated July 1994 and mentioned that the facility had been abandoned with no trace of the missing persons. The camera panned over crime scene photos, showing bloodstains, shattered equipment, and cryptic symbols scrawled on the walls. As Jamie watched, the symbols on the screen began to pulse and glow, almost as if they were alive. She felt a sharp pain in her head and heard the whispers again, louder this time. "Join us, find the truth." She clutched her temples, trying to block out the noise, but it was relentless. Desperate, she ejected the tape and threw it across the room. The whispers stopped instantly, leaving her in oppressive silence. Determined to understand what she had seen, Jamie turned to the internet. She searched for any information about Dr. Lava and the experiment, but found nothing. It was as if they had been erased from history. Frustrated, she posted about her experience on a retro tech forum, hoping someone might know more. A user named Archivist responded almost immediately, claiming to have information about the experiment. He sent Jamie a series of old newspaper clippings and government documents, revealing that the archive was rumored to be a clandestine project funded by a secretive organization known only as the Order. According to the documents, the Order sought to unlock the secrets of the human mind to gain unimaginable power. The experiment was their most ambitious project, but it had gone horribly wrong. The participants had inadvertently opened a gateway to another dimension, a place of unimaginable horror. The archivist warned Jamie to destroy the tape and forget what she had seen, but curiosity got the better of her. She asked for more information, and the archivist reluctantly agreed to meet in person. Jamie met the archivist at a rundown cafe on the outskirts of town. He was an older man with a haunted look in his eyes. He handed her a thick folder of documents and told her the truth. The tape was a conduit to the archive, and anyone who watched it risked being pulled into its nightmarish realm. He revealed that he had been part of the Order and had narrowly escaped their clutches. He had spent years tracking down and destroying the remaining tapes, but some had slipped through the cracks. Jamie's tape was one of the last. The archivist begged Jamie to destroy the tape and warned her that the Order would stop at nothing to reclaim it. He left abruptly, leaving Jamie alone with the documents and a growing sense of dread. Back at her apartment, Jamie pored over the documents. They detailed the true purpose of the archive: to harvest and store the memories and souls of those who entered, creating a repository of forbidden knowledge. The participants' visions were not hallucinations. They were glimpses into the archive's horrific reality. The more Jamie read, the more she felt the archive's pull. She heard the whispers again, now clearer. "Join us, find the truth." She glanced at the tape, still lying where she had thrown it. Against her better judgment, she inserted it back into the VHS player and pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing Dr. Lava's office once more. This time his expression was different, more desperate. He spoke directly to Jamie, as if aware of her presence. He revealed that the Order had found a way to enter the archive and were using it to gain control over those who watched the tapes. He begged Jamie to destroy the tape before it was too late. But before he could say more, the screen distorted, and the towering figure with glowing eyes appeared. It spoke in a deep, resonant voice, promising Jamie power and knowledge beyond her wildest dreams if she joined them. The whispers grew louder, urging her to accept the offer. Jamie felt a powerful compulsion to obey, her mind teetering on the edge of madness. She fought against it, but the pull was too strong. Summoning every ounce of willpower, Jamie ejected the tape and smashed it with a hammer. The whispers stopped abruptly, and she felt the oppressive weight lift from her mind. But the damage was done. She knew the Order would come for her. She packed a bag and fled her apartment, leaving behind everything she owned. As she drove away, she saw dark figures in her rearview mirror, watching her from the shadows. Jamie moved from town to town, never staying in one place for too long. She remained vigilant, always watching for signs of the Order. Despite her efforts, she knew she could never truly escape the archive's influence. Years later, a new post appeared on the Retro Tech forum. It was from a user named Archivist, warning of a cursed VHS tape titled The Archive. He urged anyone who found it to destroy it immediately. Jamie knew it was only a matter of time before someone else found the tape. And so the cycle would begin again, as the archive's dark legacy continued to spread, claiming new victims and adding to its endless repository of horrors.
Shadow Gengar.
In the quiet, sleepy town of Veilstone, nothing much ever happened. Nestled between misty mountains and surrounded by dense, ancient forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and life moved at a pace that mirrored the slow-flowing river that wound through its heart. But lately, something was different. Something unsettling lurked in the air, a feeling of being watched, of not being alone even when you were. It started with small pokemons. A Shinx went missing here, a Glamo vanished there. At first, people brushed it off, blaming the encroaching wilderness for their Pokemon's sudden disappearances. But then the stories began to spread. Whispers of strange occurrences, of shadows moving without a source, of an eerie chill that seemed to follow you wherever you went. Then the people started to disappear. First, it was old Mrs. Abigail, who lived at the edge of town. She was known for her reclusive nature, so when she didn't show up for a few days, no one thought much of it. But when the mail piled up and the grocery delivery boy found her door ajar, alarm bells rang. The inside of her house was untouched, except for one thing. Her favorite armchair, always stationed by the window, had been dragged across the room. The floor beneath it was scorched black as if burned by an intense heat, though no fire had ever touched it. The next disappearance was young Dallas, a boy who loved exploring the forests. His parents found his shoes neatly placed at the foot of his bed one morning, but there was no trace of him. They searched the woods, calling his name until their voices were hoarse, but all they found was his backpack, tossed aside near a hollow tree. Inside was a sketchbook filled with drawings of dark, looming shadows and grinning faces with hollow eyes. Rumors began to swirl. Some said the forest was cursed, haunted by an ancient spirit that preyed on the unsuspecting. Others claimed it was the work of a malevolent Pokemon, one that thrived in darkness and fear. But no one had ever seen it. No one knew what it was. All they knew was that once you were taken, you never came back. It was during this growing panic that a stranger arrived in Veilstone. His name was Dr. Edward Cedar, a researcher from Saffron City, known for his work in the field of parapsychology and the study of ghost-type Bachman. With graying hair, sharp eyes, and a demeanor that suggested he was no stranger to the macabre, he quickly became the talk of the town. Some welcomed him, hoping he would put an end to the terror. Others were wary, fearing he would only bring more trouble. Dr. Cedar set up shop in the old inn, which had been abandoned for years, its windows boarded up and its doors creaking on rusted hinges. He spent his days in the forest and his nights poring over ancient texts and musty old books, searching for answers. The townsfolk avoided him, unsettled by the strange, flickering lights that emanated from the inn's windows after dark and the strange sounds that echoed through the night air. One evening, a knock came at the inn's door. Dr. Cedar opened it to find a young woman standing there, her face pale and drawn.
"Please,"
she whispered.
"you have to help me. My brother, he's gone. I don't know what to do."
Her name was Hannah, and she was the sister of Dallas, the boy who had vanished. She had come to Dr. Cedar as a last resort, driven by desperation and the hope that he might be able to bring her brother back. Dr. Cedar listened intently as she told her story, nodding thoughtfully. When she was finished, he asked her if she had noticed anything unusual before Dallas's disappearance. Anything at all, no matter how small. Hannah hesitated, then spoke in a low voice.
"There was one thing. The night before he disappeared, Dallas said he saw a shadow outside his window. But it wasn't a normal shadow. It moved on its own, and it was shaped like a person, but twisted, like something out of a nightmare."
Dr. Cedar leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Did he describe it in any more detail? Hannah shook her head.
"No, but he was terrified. He didn't sleep at all that night, and the next day he was gone."
Dr. Cedar stood up, his mind racing. "I need to see his room," he said. "Take me there, and don't touch anything until I've had a look." Hannah led Dr. Cedar to her home, a small, cozy house on the outskirts of town. Dallas's room was just as he had left it, bed unmade, clothes strewn about, and the windows slightly ajar. Dr. Cedar walked around the room, his keen eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Then he saw it, a faint, almost imperceptible mark on the wall beside the window, as if something had brushed against it. He ran his fingers over the spot, feeling a chill that seeped into his bones. "This isn't natural," he muttered to himself, pulling a small device from his bag. It was a spirit sensor, designed to detect the presence of ghost-type Bachman. He held it up to the mark, and the device immediately began to emit a low, ominous hum. "There is something here," Dr. Cedar said, turning to Hannah, "something powerful. I need to investigate further, but I must warn you, this may not be easy to understand, and it could be dangerous." Hannah nodded, her fear evident but outweighed by her determination.
"I just want my brother back."
Dr. Cedar spent the next few days in Dallas's room, setting up various instruments and devices, tracking the fluctuations in the air, and recording every minute detail. The spirit sensor hummed constantly, and the room grew colder, with each passing day until it felt as though the very air was being sucked out, leaving a void in its place. One night, as Dr. Cedar sat in the darkened room, he heard it, a soft, barely audible whisper. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a voice that slipped through the cracks in the walls and the spaces between the seconds. Dr. Cedar's heart raced as he followed the sound, his breath visible in the freezing air. The voice grew louder, more desperate, leading him to the corner of the room where Dallas's backpack had been found. He knelt down, his hands shaking, and pulled the sketchbook from the bag. As he flipped through the pages, the drawings became darker, more disturbing. The shadowy figures Dallas had drawn were not just random shapes. They were faces, twisted, grinning faces with hollow eyes that seemed to stare into Dr. Cedar's very soul. And then he saw it, a name scrawled in the margin of one of the pages, written in a shaky, childlike hand. Gengar. Dr. Cedar's blood ran cold. Gengar, a Pokémon known for its ability to lurk in the shadows, to blend into the darkness and prey on the fears of the living. It was said that Gengar was born from a human's shadow, a being of pure malice and spite that sought to drag others into the afterlife to join it in eternal torment. But this was no ordinary Gengar. Dr. Cedar had studied ghost-type Pokémon for years, and he knew that Gengar, while mischievous and sometimes malevolent, was not usually this dangerous. This one, however, was different. It was ancient, powerful, and driven by a dark purpose. The disappearances, the strange occurrences, all of it pointed to one thing. Gengar was using the town of Veilstone as its hunting ground, feeding off the fear of its inhabitants and dragging them into the shadowy void where it resided. Dr. Cedar knew he had to act quickly. He needed to confront the creature, to find its lair and banish it before it could claim more victims. But he also knew that doing so would be incredibly dangerous. Gengar was not a creature to be trifled with, and its powers were beyond anything he had encountered before. He prepared himself as best he could, gathering all the tools and knowledge at his disposal. He knew he couldn't do it alone, so he asked Hannah to help him despite the risks. Hannah agreed, her fear tempered by her resolve to find her brother. Together they retraced Dallas's steps, venturing into the forest where his backpack had been found. The trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until the sunlight was little more than a distant memory. Finally, they reached the hollow tree where Dallas's backpack had been discovered. The air around it was thick with an oppressive, suffocating energy, and the spirit sensor in Dr. Cedar's hand went wild, emitting a high-pitched whine that set his teeth on edge. "This is it," Dr. Cedar said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is where it's hiding." With trembling hands, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small silver talisman inscribed with ancient runes. It was a protective charm, one that he had used in the past to ward off ghost-type Pokémon. He handed it to Anna, who clutched it tightly, her knuckles white. As they approached the tree, the shadows around them began to shift and writhe. As if alive, Dr. Cedar felt a chill run down his spine, and he knew that they were no longer alone. "Show yourself," he called out, his voice echoing through the forest. For a moment there was silence. Then, slowly, a figure began to materialize in the shadows. It was Gengar, its wife, menacing grin stretching across its face, its eyes gleaming with malice. The air grew colder still, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble. Gengar spoke, its voice a low, guttural rasp.
You dare challenge me, human?
Dr. Cedar stood his ground. Oh, his heart pounded in his chest. I know what you've been doing, he said. I know about the people you've taken, but it ends here. I won't let you claim another victim. Gengar laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Dr. Cedar's spine.
You think you can stop me? I am the darkness. I am the shadow that haunts your nightmares. You are nothing but a fool.
With a wave of its hand, Gengar summoned a wall of shadow, blocking their path. The darkness pressed in around them, suffocating and cold, and Dr. Cedar struggled to breathe, but he refused to give up. With a trembling hand, he reached into his bag and pulled out a pokeball. If you won't leave willingly, he said, then I'll have to make you. Gengar's grin widened, and it lunged at him, its claws outstretched. Dr. Cedar threw the pokeball, and it burst open, releasing a flash of light. From the light emerged a Pokémon, Mismagius, a ghost type known for its powerful incantations. Mismagius, use Shadow Ball, Dr. Cedar commanded. Mismagius let out a haunting cry and unleashed a sphere of dark energy at Gengar. The attack struck Gengar, but it barely flinched, its body dissolving into the shadows.
You cannot defeat me.
Gengar taunted.
I am eternal.
Dr. Cedar gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Gengar was too powerful, too entrenched in the darkness. But then he remembered something, an old legend he had once read about a way to banish a Gengar that had become too powerful. It required a sacrifice. Dr. Cedar took a deep breath. Gengar feeds on fear, on the energy of the living. To banish it, we need to sever its connection to this world. But to do that, someone has to willingly give themselves to the darkness, to act as a beacon, drawing Gengar so that it can be trapped. Hannah's eyes widened in horror.
You're talking about...
Yes, Dr. Cedar said. One of us has to become a sacrifice. She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes.
No, there has to be another way. We can't.
There isn't, Dr. Cedar said, his voice firm. Gengar is too powerful. If we don't do this, it will continue to terrorize the town, to take more lives. We have to stop it, no matter the cost. Hannah stared at him, her face pale and stricken.
But who?
Dr. Cedar hesitated, his mind racing. He knew what he had to do. He had brought Hannah into this, and it was his responsibility to make things right. He couldn't ask her to make the sacrifice, not after everything she had already lost. I'll do it, he said quietly. I'll be the one to draw Gengar in. But you have to promise me something. Hannah shook her head, tears streaming down her face.
No, you can't.
Promise me, Dr. Cedar insisted. Promise me you'll find your brother and get out of here. Don't look back, just run. She nodded, though her tears continued to fall.
I promise.
Dr. Cedar turned back to Gengar, who was watching them with amusement, as if it could sense what was about to happen. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Mismagius, he said, his voice trembling, use Parish song. Mismagius hesitated for a moment, then began to sing a haunting, mournful melody. The air around them grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and Dr. Cedar felt a cold, creeping sensation wash over him. Gengar's grin faltered as it realized what was happening.
No, you wouldn't dare.
But it was too late. The parish song began to take effect, draining the life energy from everything within its range. Dr. Cedar felt his strength leaving him, felt the darkness closing in. But he didn't stop. He knew he couldn't stop. As the parish song reached its crescendo, Gengar let out a howl of rage and pain. Its form began to waver, its connection to the physical world weakening. Dr. Cedar could feel it being drawn towards him, pulled in by the energy of the parish song. "Now, Hannah," he shouted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Run." She hesitated for a moment, then turned and fled, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't look back, didn't stop until she was far, far away from the hollow tree, from the darkness that had claimed so many. Dr. Cedar watched her go, a faint smile on his lips. He had done it. He had saved the town, saved Hannah. But the cost had been high. As the darkness closed in around him, he felt Gengar's presence, its malevolent energy pressing down on him. But he wasn't afraid. He had faced death before, had looked into the abyss and emerged unscathed. This time he was ready. With one final breath, Dr. Cedar let go. The darkness enveloped him, and he felt himself slipping away, his consciousness fading into the void. But even as he disappeared, he knew that he had won. Gengar was gone, banished to the shadows, where it could no longer harm anyone. And in the end, that was all that mattered. The town of Veilstone slowly returned to normal after that night. The disappearances stopped, and the strange occurrences ceased. The townsfolk never knew what had happened in the forest, never knew the sacrifice that had been made to protect them. But Hannah knew. She kept her promise to Dr. Cedar and found her brother, scared but alive, hidden away in a small cave deep within the forest. They returned home, grateful to be together again, though the memory of what had happened would haunt them forever. As for Dr. Cedar, his name was never forgotten. The people of Veilstone spoke of him with reverence, of the man who had come to their town and faced the darkness head-on. And though they never knew the true nature of the evil that had plagued them, they knew that they owed their lives to him. But in the darkest corners of the forest, where the shadows still lingered, some said they could hear a faint whisper on the wind, a voice that spoke of things long forgotten, of a creature that had once thrived in the darkness. And though they never saw it again, they knew that Gengar was still out there, waiting, watching, and biding its time. For in the world of Pac-Man, there are some creatures that can never truly be defeated. They merely retreat, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. And when that time comes, the shadows will rise once more.
Darkness of mind.
James Croft stared out his apartment window, the reflection of street lights glinting off his eyes like the last spark of humanity dimming in a dark cavern. His fingers twitched on the windowsill as he whispered to himself, "I'm their keeper. I will keep them safe." The world outside his sanctuary was loud, chaotic, teeming with sin and corruption. He had never understood it, but James had found his purpose. His true calling was a mission ordained by a force beyond this reality, one that spoke directly to him in the quiet hours of the night. His task was simple but profound: to preserve the purity of women, their untouched, divine essence before the world saw them. He was a protector, not a killer. James Croft was a man of vision. No one else could see what he saw. The first time he felt the pull was at a park. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sun setting behind trees as the orange hues cast a soft glow on the path. That's when he saw her, Anna. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, sitting by herself on a bench. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her face untouched by the harsh realities of the world. There was something in her eyes, innocence, maybe, a naivete that made her seem like she had never truly been touched by darkness. James felt his heart beat faster. He had to protect her. If the world got its claws into her, she'd lose that innocence, that purity. The mission had spoken to him. Anna was to be his first. Later that night, James prepared for his work with precision. His apartment was dimly lit, and his tools lay neatly on a table. He wasn't preparing for violence. No, he was preparing to give her a gift, a form of preservation, like the old taxidermists who believe they were honoring life by capturing it in an eternal, unchanging state. He wasn't harming them, he was saving them. Anna didn't scream when he found her. She didn't even know she was in danger. In his mind, she was simply entering a state of serenity. He made sure she was comfortable, tied to a chair, her head resting against the back. She would stay pure, preserved in time, untouched by the corruption of the world. His gloved hands moved like a surgeon's, ensuring her purity would remain unspoiled. When he was done, she lay there as if asleep, her face still serene. He whispered in her ear before leaving her body behind, "Now we'll be safe. Now we'll be pure forever." As the months passed, James became more attuned to the voices that guided him. He began to see purity everywhere, in bookstores, cafes, and even the subway. Each time the mission called him to act. Emily was next. She worked at a coffee shop, her youthful smile radiating warmth. It was a smile that would inevitably be stolen by the cruelties of life. But not if James could help it. He watched her for days, learning her routine, hearing the whispers of his mission telling him she was next. When he took Emily, it was different. His hands were gentler, more practiced. He understood better now that this wasn't about him. It was about them. He was their savior. James spoke to her in soothing tones while he prepared his tools. He told her how much he admired her, how she was special, and that she was going to be preserved in her purest state. Emily didn't struggle. In his mind, she welcomed him, grateful even. In reality, Emily's eyes were wide with terror, her body rigid with fear, but James didn't see that. He saw gratitude, peace, serenity. Afterward, James looked at her with satisfaction. He had kept her safe, he had kept her pure, but James' delusion couldn't stay perfect forever. One day, as he wandered the streets searching for his next charge, he stumbled upon something that disturbed him. A television in a store window flashed images of the women he had saved. Except the headlines didn't describe them as saved. They were missing. The newscaster called them victims of a deranged serial killer. The words twisted James' gut. His breath quickened, and for a brief moment, the voices in his head went silent. "No," he whispered to himself, shaking his head. "They're safe. I made them safe." The images of Anna and Emily flickered across the screen, their pictures accompanied by desperate pleas from their families. James stared, his mind racing, trying to reconcile the dissonance between what he was seeing and what he knew to be true. "They don't understand," the voices told him again. louder now, more insistent. They're lost in their corruption. You're the only one who can keep them pure. But for the first time, doubt had crept into his mind. Was he really preserving them, or was he destroying them? The doubt gnawed at James, and he became more frantic in his mission. His need to preserve became an obsession that consumed his every thought. He began moving faster, acting more erratically. He found new targets, but didn't plan as carefully. He needed to save them all, but time was running out. He found Alice in a library. Her soft-spoken nature and shy demeanor made her perfect. He followed her home, but this time his hands shook as he prepared. Something was wrong. The voices were louder, harsher, urging him on even as his mind started to fracture. Alice struggled more than the others. She pleaded with him, her cries loud in the small apartment. But James heard nothing but the voices. He was doing this for her, to keep her safe, to preserve her purity. His hands, once gentle, were now frantic, and as Alice's body went limp, James felt nothing but cold emptiness. Something had changed. The voices were still there, but the satisfaction he once felt was gone. All that remained was a hollow void. James fled from Alice's apartment, but the world felt different now, darker, more twisted. The streets seemed narrower, the lights dimmer. Everywhere he went, he felt eyes on him. He began to see faces in the shadows, watching, waiting. Days passed in a blur, and James' grip on reality continued to slip. He no longer felt the clarity of his mission. Instead, he was haunted by the faces of the women he had saved, their eyes accusing him, their voices now screaming in his head. He couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. Finally, he returned to the park where he had first seen Anna. He sat on the same bench, clutching his head as the voices screamed inside his mind. He needed to make them stop. He needed to find peace. And then he saw her, a young woman, no older than Anna had been, walked by. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear. She wasn't innocent. She was terrified of him. James stood and approached her, his movements shaky and disjointed. "I can help you," he whispered, reaching out to her with trembling hands. But as he touched her, something in his mind snapped. Reality came rushing back with a violent clarity he had never felt before. He wasn't saving them, he was killing them. The weight of his actions crushed him, and James collapsed to the ground, clutching his head as the truth overwhelmed him. The women he thought he had saved were gone, lost forever, their lives snuffed out by his delusions. In his twisted mind, he had believed he was a savior, but in the cold light of reality, he was nothing but a killer, a monster who had destroyed the very purity he had sought to preserve. As the police arrived, alerted by the screams of the young woman, James didn't resist. He didn't fight, he simply stared ahead, his mind shattered, his purpose lost. He had failed them, he had failed them all. James Croft now sits in a padded cell, his eyes vacant, his mind lost to the madness that once drove him. The voices are silent now, replaced by a deafening void. He no longer sees himself as a savior, he knows what he is. But sometimes, late at night, in the quiet of his cell, he hears a faint whisper, a reminder of the twisted mission that once consumed him. And in those moments, a small smile creeps across his lips, for in the depths of his madness, part of him still believes he was right. They were pure, and he had kept them that way.
The ring.
I've always believed that some things are better left alone, the old man began, his voice low and gravelly. The group of young travelers leaned in closer, their faces lit by the flickering campfire. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood, and the cold mountain breeze whispered through the trees surrounding them. They had come to Pampanga for a weekend getaway, drawn by the town's cool climate and picturesque views. But the night had taken an unexpected turn when their tour guide, Mangband, had joined them by the fire. The old man, with his weathered face and knowing eyes, had lived in the town his entire life, and he had stories that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. This isn't just some urban legend, Mangband continued, looking each of them in the eye. It's something that really happened. I know because I was there. I saw the aftermath, the fear it brought to this town. And I'm telling you now, it's not something you want to mess with. One of the younger men in the group, Alex, smirked. Come on, Mangband, you're not gonna scare us with some ghost stories, are you? We've heard them all. This isn't about scaring you, Mangband said, his tone turning serious. It's about warning you there are things out there that we don't understand, and some of them are dangerous. The group fell silent, the crackling of the fire the only sound for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, Mangband began his tale. This all started a few years ago, Mangband said, leaning back in his chair. There was this girl, Katrina, who lived in town. She was just a regular college student, nothing special. She liked to take long walks, especially in the evenings, to clear her head after a day of classes. One evening, she was walking along one of those trails up in the mountains when she found something. He paused, letting the tension build. The firelight cast eerie shadows on his face, making him look almost ghostly. It was a ring, a simple gold band with a small red gemstone. It wasn't flashy, just something you might wear every day, but something about it caught her eye. She picked it up, and the moment she did, she felt strange, like something heavy had settled in her chest. Mangband shook his head, as if trying to shake off the memory. Katrina didn't think much of it at first. She slipped the ring into her pocket and went home. But that night, things started happening. She had this awful dream. She was in a dark room, and there was this figure standing just out of reach. It didn't say anything, but she could feel it watching her, waiting. When she woke up, she was drenched in sweat, and the ring was on her finger. How did it get there? One of the girls, Clara, asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's the thing, Mangband replied. She didn't put it on. But there it was, like it had a mind of its own. She tried to take it off, but it wouldn't budge. It was stuck, like it had fused with her skin. The group exchanged uneasy glances, the mood around the campfire shifting from lighthearted to tense. Over the next few days, Katrina started noticing weird things happening around her. Mangband continued. Her phone would ring in the middle of the night, but there was no one on the other end. She'd hear footsteps following her, but when she turned around, there was no one there. And then there was the feeling like she was never alone, even when she knew she was. Then people started dying, Mangband said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It started with her neighbor, Mrs. Reyes. She was found dead in her kitchen, burned alive, but there was no sign of a fire. just her, charred black, and everything else untouched. The group gasped, the horror of the image sinking in. A few days later, another person died. This time it was Katrina's professor, who had been helping her with a research project. He was found crushed beneath a tree that had fallen in the middle of a perfectly calm night. No wind, no storm, nothing to explain it. And it wasn't just any tree. It was one that had been standing in the university grounds for over 100 years, solid as a rock. But that night, it came down on him like it was pushed. Katrina was terrified by this point. Mang Ben continued, his voice heavy with the weight of the tale. She knew it had something to do with the ring. She tried everything to get rid of it, cutting it off, smashing it with a hammer, even throwing it into a river. But no matter what she did, the ring always came back. She'd wake up in the morning, and there it was, still on her finger. What did she do? Asked Jake, one of the more skeptical members of the group. She went to the only person who might have answers, Mang Ben replied. An old healer who lived in the mountains. Someone who was said to know about things that most people wouldn't even believe. The healer told her that the ring was cursed, bound to her in a way that couldn't be undone. It was looking for something, the healer said, and it wouldn't stop until it found it. Mang Ben took a deep breath before continuing. The healer told Katrina that the ring had a history. It wasn't always cursed. It was just a ring, a family heirloom that had been passed down for generations. But something tragic happened. A young woman in the family was murdered, and the ring was stolen. It was said that her spirit, angry and vengeful, lashed onto the ring, cursing it and anyone who wore it. From then on, the ring brought death to anyone who tried to claim it as their own. The healer told Katrina that she was the latest in a long line of victims, and that the curse would only end when the ring found what it was looking for. But the healer didn't know what that was. She just told Katrina to be careful and to pray that she wasn't the one the ring would take its final vengeance on. The group was silent, captivated by the story. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on their faces. Katrina didn't know what to do. Mang Ben continued, his voice softening. She tried to go on with her life, but the deaths didn't stop. People close to her, her best friend, her aunt, even her pet dog, Cassandra, started dying in strange, inexplicable ways. All the while, the ring remained on her finger, a constant reminder of the curse. Mang Ben's face grew somber as he spoke. Then, one day, Katrina just disappeared. No one knows what happened to her. Some say she finally found a way to break the curse and went into hiding. Others believe the ring took her, claimed her life just like it had claimed the others. But the truth is, she was never seen again. And the ring? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's the thing, Mang Ben said, his eyes narrowing. The ring was never found. Some say it's still out there, waiting for its next victim. It could be anywhere, waiting for someone to pick it up, put it on, and start the cycle all over again. And if you ever come across a ring lying on the ground, especially here in Pampanga, you'd better think twice before you pick it up. The group sat in stunned silence, the weight of Mang Ben's words settling over them like a thick fog. The once warm and cozy atmosphere of the campfire had turned cold, and the darkness around them seemed to press in closer. Is it true? Alex finally asked, breaking the silence. Did all that really happen? Mang Ben shrug, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Believe what you want, but, like I said, some things are better left alone. With that, he stood up and walked away from the fire, leaving the group to ponder the chilling tale he had just told. The night was still and quiet, the only sound the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. As the travelers sat there, lost in thought, none of them noticed a small, blending object lying just outside the circle of firelight, a simple gold ring with a blood-red gemstone, waiting for someone to pick it up.
The Helios.
I never believed in anything supernatural. I'm the rational type, always thinking things through, which is why I moved to this quiet little town after the breakup. I needed a change of pace, a fresh start. The rent was cheap, and it wasn't far from the city, just a small town where I could collect myself and start over. The first thing I noticed were the flyers. They were everywhere, taped to lamp posts, glued to walls, pinned to bulletin boards. The sun watches. We are all its size. I thought it was just some cryptic advertisement, maybe for a local event or some new age cult. I ignored it, but there was something unsettling about those words. The way they lingered in my mind, the sun watches. I could almost feel the heat of it on my skin as I read the words, even though it was early evening, and the sky was turning purple. Still, I chalked it up to stress, a new town, a new life. It was natural to feel a little uneasy. By the end of the first week, I started seeing them everywhere. The people with the sun symbol etched into their wrists. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, maybe some popular tattoo design. But it was the same symbol for the flyers, a crude, childlike drawing of a sun with too many rays, almost like a spider with uneven legs. It started small, just noticing people in cafes, on the street, at the grocery store. They always seemed to be nearby, always seemed to glance in my direction just as I was looking away. I brushed it off as paranoia. In a small town, you see the same people often, right? Then things began to disappear. First, it was my keys. I thought I'd misplaced them. I spent half an hour tearing apart my apartment before finding them sitting neatly on the coffee table, even though I'd already checked there. Then it was my journal. I'd kept it since college, filled with years of personal thoughts, sketches, poems, things I never shared with anyone. When it went missing, I searched every drawer, every closet, nothing. A few days later, it was back, lying open on my bed. But the last few entries, they weren't mine. I hadn't written those words, the sun sees everything. The dreams started shortly after that. In the dreams, I was standing in an open field, the sky above me a burning white, no clouds, no blue, just an endless blinding light. I was surrounded by people, but I couldn't see their faces. They were standing in a circle around me, chanting in low, rhythmic voices. The sun watches, the sun watches. Every time I tried to move, the light grew hotter, as though it were searing into my skin, pinning me in place. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the heat from the dream lingering in my bones. I told myself it was just stress. Moving to a new town, adjusting to a new life, it could mess with your head, right? But then I started seeing the people from my dreams, the faceless ones. I'd see them on the street, standing in the distance, watching. Always watching. It wasn't just strangers anymore. I went to the diner down the road, the one I'd been to a few times since moving here. The waitress, Ellie, smiled at me as she handed me my coffee. I smiled back, but then I noticed it, the tattoo on her wrist, the sun, the same uneven rays. "How's your day going, Rachel?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost too casual. I hadn't told her my name, I was sure of it. I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced a smile. "It's fine. How about yours?" She didn't respond, just kept smiling, her eyes fixed on me in a way that made my skin crawl. After that, I couldn't stay. I left the diner, but even as I walked away, I could feel her eyes on me, watching me through the window. That night, I checked the locks on my apartment 3 times before bed. I slept with the lights on. I woke up to find my front door open. I had locked it. I was sure of it. But there it was, swinging gently, as though someone had been standing just outside, waiting for me to wake up. I rushed to close it, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I saw it, the flyer lying on the floor just inside the door. The same flyer I'd seen all over town, only this time there was something different. Written in red ink across the bottom were the words, "You are chosen." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced. Was someone in my apartment? Had they been inside while I slept? I called the police. They came, checked the place, and said there was no sign of forced entry. They were polite but distant, as though they were going through the motions. I tried to tell them about the flyers, about the people with tattoos, about the strange things that had been happening. They just gave me a blank stare. "You're safe, ma'am," the officer said, his tone flat, emotionless. "The sun watches over us all." I froze. "What did you say?" He smiled, a slow, unsettling smile. "The sun watches over us all." I slammed the door shut after they left, my hands shaking. I tried calling my old friends. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who wasn't part of this town, who wasn't part of whatever this was. But every time I dialed, I got nothing but static. Sometimes I thought I heard a voice beneath the static, whispering those same words. "The sun watches. We are all its eyes." I stopped going out. I stopped answering the door. The dreams were getting worse. Every night, the same burning light, the same chanting figures. But now, they were getting closer. I could almost see their faces, could almost hear the words they were whispering. Then, one night, I heard it in real life. It was faint at first, a low hum outside my window. But as I strained to listen, I realized it was the same chant from the dreams. "The sun watches, the sun watches." I looked outside, and there they were, people, standing in the street, watching my apartment. Their faces were shadowed, but I could see the faint glint of tattoos on their wrists. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't just in my head anymore. My reflection started to change. At first, it was subtle, just a trick of the light, I told myself. But then I noticed it. My eyes, they were wrong. They weren't my eyes anymore. They were too wide, too dark, as though the pupils had swallowed the irises, like I'd been staring into the sun for too long. I stopped looking in mirrors after that. I tried to reach out for help. I found a woman online, someone who claimed to know about the Helios. She'd been part of it once, she said, but she'd escaped. I was desperate, so I met her in a cafe on the outskirts of town. Her name was Marla. She looked tired, worn down, like someone who had been running for a long time. "They get inside your head," she said, her voice a low whisper. It starts slow. You think it's just paranoia, but it's not. They watch you, they make you see things, hear things. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. I leaned forward, my hands trembling. How do I stop it? How do I get away from them? Marla shook her head, her eyes hollow. You don't. Once they have you, they don't let go. They own you now. I left the cafe in a daze. Her words echoed in my mind, a chorus of hopelessness. They own you now. Everything was gone. I woke up to an empty apartment. My furniture, my clothes, my books, everything was gone. The only thing left was my journal, lying open on the floor. I picked it up, my hands shaking. The pages were filled with words I hadn't written. The sun watches, the sun watches. I dropped the journal and stumbled back, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I ran to the door, but when I opened it, I found myself face to face with them. The people from my dreams, the people with tattoos. They were standing in the hallway, blocking my way. We are all its eyes, they whispered in unison. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It's over. I can't fight it anymore. I see it now, the truth. I was never in control. They were always there, watching, guiding me. Every decision I thought I made on my own, every choice I thought was mine, it was all them. The Helios, they don't need violence. They don't need force. They get inside your head. They make you doubt your own reality. Twist your thoughts until you don't know what's real anymore. I belong to them now. I am part of the Helios. I look at myself in the mirror, and I don't recognize the face staring back at me. My eyes are too wide, too dark. They aren't mine anymore. They belong to the sun. I don't know where I end and they begin. The sun watches, and now so do I. Thank you for tuning in. Please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you again next week.